Hello and welcome back to the Halftime Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about grassroots football and the effect that COVID-19 is going to have on it. Today's show is going to be hosted by Danny Cook, and his guests are me, Charlie Pumfrey, and Harry Sherman. And he's going to be the first. Harry will be the first voice you hear. Enjoy.
Just because we can't train and we can't get back up and running and we can't play football, we've already paid out pretty much for the season for matches. Training wise, we're lucky in the sense that we train at school, so they're obviously closed down, so they can't charge us for their pitches that won't be used. But financially it's going to kill us this year, and I'm sure it's going to be the same for many grassroots clubs around England and London as well.
Okay, well let's get Charlie's thoughts as well. Charlie, at the club you're coaching at, do you hear anything as to how they're dealing with the coronavirus outbreak?
From what I hear from a coach I coach with and other coaches, fortunately I've got another family member who coaches for the club as well, so we kind of have two different age groups. We see what's going on, but not quite as obviously overwatching as Harry's involvement at Kinja. But for us, it's kind of one of those, we're trying to wait and see what's going on. We were still playing games up until, I think I mentioned it in the last pod, up until last Sunday was our last game. And we were still operating on the assumption that, well, as long as we can get games going, we'll make sure we can keep going. And then that came down the line, I think more, to be honest, from the County FA and from the National FA, saying, look, at this point, it's come under suggestion that we shouldn't be playing. Let's just take an indefinite break for the time being. And I mean, the issue for us is that, like Harry said, we've paid for facilities at this point. Fortunately, we were just coming to the end of paying for a 4G pitch as we were getting into the better months where the weather allows us to play on grass. But still, obviously, still having to pay for those facilities. And I think the financial side of it is going to hit a lot of clubs very hard. And I think that goes all the way up. We're talking about grassroots football, going all the way up to non-league football. Going up to Tier 5, Tier 6, it's going to really hit clubs hard because they rely on that money to come through the doors. They rely on, like you say, whether it's players playing, whether it's FA grants, where is that money going to trickle down from? Because ultimately, and it's probably the right thing, that money is going elsewhere to people that ultimately will deserve it. And I think it's such a difficult thing because football is almost ingrained in society here, and that comes, I think, as much from grassroots football as watching Liverpool versus Man United on a Sunday afternoon. And it's going to take a lot of money, a lot of logistical help from the FA and from the county FAs to kind of keep everything together and keep people engaged as well. Because if it's 6 months from now until the next time a grassroots football match is played, you're going to have a real struggle to get people back in the door again.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep, and actually, just on that point, then, I wanted to ask Harry to start off with: is there anything that you've seen or heard from the FA or local county FAs as to any support they're giving you during this time?
Minimal, if I'm honest. I mean, we've always had quite a good relationship with our county FA, and I think the trouble is with them is there's so many clubs sort of in our area and around in the county that to sort of get direct support right now is just impossible. I think they've done as much as they can in terms of sort of just telling teams not to go ahead with training, telling teams not to go ahead with matches, and just to shut everything down until further notice. But I mean, it's a massive sort of job really now for the FA and county FAs to help these grassroots clubs get up and running. Because I mean, it's like I said earlier, financially, there's going to be a lot of clubs that have been hit. Like Charlie said, player-wise, to get them back into the swing of things, it's going to take a massive push. It's so hard to predict what's going to happen because obviously you don't know how long this is going to be the case for, and you don't know what situation these clubs are going to be in when they come back. But I do expect that the county FAs will be offering out support sort of when everything settles down and when sort of grassroots club is back, just sort of with grants and with financial support as well. But it's happening across the world really, so everyone's in the same boat, aren't they? That's the thing.
Yeah, very true. And just on that, you touched on it very briefly there. Is there any sort of, you obviously mentioned grants and financial support. Is there anything sort of off the top of your head that you as a club would, you would want if they offered, say, financial support? Is that something that would benefit the club, or are you looking for like help with marketing in terms of reaching new players and getting new players in? Like, is there anything that you would like from them?
I think the biggest concern is financially. I think that's going to be the one that most clubs will need support with and need help with to get back on their feet. I think marketing. I think as long as the clubs are smart and they keep the players engaged and they keep and they just keep letting the parents and the players know what's going on, they'll still be involved in the club, and obviously they can then help spread the word and sort of put the feelers out for players to come in. There's not much the county FA can do more than what they were doing already. That's the thing. I mean, they can't go out and recruit players for you. They can't go out and sort of say, "Oh, this club's amazing." For you,
of course,
you've got to do that. It's word of mouth is massive in grassroots.
Well, I mean, that's good at least to hear that they're offering some support, and hopefully they'll offer more in the coming weeks and months. I mean, as soon as this thing's over and done with, hopefully, the better. Anyway, Charlie, I want to bring you in. Your team that you coach, how far would you say you're through the season with that team?
Well, I can give you a very good idea. We were 4 games from the end of the season. So I coach at under 7 level. So I can give you a more limited opinion on it than Harry will be able to give you, and obviously your opinion on it as well. But for us, our season was more about, we were getting towards tournament season now. We'd already booked, I think we booked 2 or 3 tournaments already, and that's what the kids were really gearing up for, because we don't as much have leagues at this age group. We play games, and there is a league table which doesn't officially exist if you're a parent. It's just that the players were starting to come together. I'm sure it's the case at every age group. You get to this stage of the season where everyone's starting to click. You're now not really looking at new players coming in. You're looking at what can you do with the players you have involved. And everyone's starting to now kind of work out what they're doing. That's parents as well. I mean, I coach a lot of the kids that I coach. It's their first full season in football. And it's a shame that they're now not going to have the rest of that full season of football. And it's just like you say, keeping people engaged and keeping people... Because it would be very easy if the season now ends. If they cut the season now and we don't come back till, say, August and September, you're going to have a lot of... I think, unfortunately, you got a couple of clubs... a good amount of clubs are going to really struggle, because... I mean, the one thing they will be helped by is I think facilities will become a little bit more affordable. Because there won't have been... Well, this is so difficult because it could be completely opposite. But I think if you get to September and October and these facilities have had no opportunity to rent these pitches out, to rent, well, just the pitches themselves, these facilities out, there'll have to be some sort of push. The FA will have to step in and help that situation. That as much as they'll be able to offer you financial help, they need to be stepping in at the other end of the conversation and going to the facilities and going, okay, what can we do to make it easier, to make it hopefully cheaper, but I mean that's just not always viable. And it's making sure those facilities are still available. As much as the clubs are still there, the facilities are the backbone. If there is nowhere to play, it doesn't matter how many clubs you have. If we find that football pitches just aren't open anymore, they're just not maintained anymore, that sort of aspect of, okay, well, the clubs could come back in 6 months' time, all the players would have stayed involved, but oh yeah, sorry, our pitch isn't available anymore, so we've got nowhere to train, and then we have the whole different issue. It's about keeping the whole process from beginning to end, I think, engaged, and keeping them available and keeping them financially available as well, and making sure they don't just come back and start trying to gouge those teams that come back.
Yeah. And Harry, is that something you can sort of see happening? That they wouldn't just sort of gouge teams when they come back, or are you expecting them to just inflate all their prices? Like, What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it could go either way really. They could look to, I mean, the facilities could look to completely reduce their prices to try and get clubs in, sort of rebuild their customer base, or they could go the opposite way and just say we haven't got the money, we need to charge a lot more to sort of make ends meet, kind of thing, which could be the case as well. I mean, it all depends really on sort of the government and how the FA and their support of these businesses and these facilities, and just sort of, that'll decide what sort of way they goes. I mean, if they do go the extreme end and they do pump their prices up, I mean, there'll be a lot of grassroots clubs that'll be left without a pitch. I mean, I know Kinja, for us, if we had a massive inflation on prices, we wouldn't be able to keep training where we're training really, because we struggle to make ends meet as is. So if we had a price increase, then we'd be toast.
Let's hope that isn't the case anyway. Charlie, going back to you mentioned about parents. How's that been dealing with the parents at this time? And what's the verdict amongst the parents at the moment? Are they concerned? Are they optimistic that things might turn around quickly?
I think the one positive that I'm very fortunate to deal with is that, like I said earlier, a lot of these parents, it's their first season taking their kids to football. And those that do, like those that have older siblings that go to football as well, they're all very understanding. I think everyone understands at this point that this isn't a decision that clubs are making individually anymore. This is a decision that has been handed down, and is one that, to be honest, is safe for everyone. I mean, my experience at the game we had last weekend, everyone felt a little bit off. It felt a little bit like, okay, what are we doing here? I mean, some people were treating it differently to others. I had the opposition coach come over before the game and go to shake my hand, and I was like, oh, don't want to be rude, but not a great time to be doing that right now. And I think I'm lucky that the parents are really understanding. I'd be really interested to hear from you, Danny, and hear from Harry about what it's like. I know it's a very different atmosphere, a very different sort of community that you coach within. What their sort of reaction is to it.
We've had, I mean, in terms of it depends on the age group we've experienced really. From our youngest sort of competitive team is the under-9s, and we had the training attendance and the match attendance completely crumbled. We had one. This was sort of right at the start when everything happened. One of the coach of that team, he put a message in the chat sort of saying, "Oh, like, we need to try and pick attendance up. Let's try and get the commitment back on track." And one of the parents turned around and messaged, "Oh, with coronavirus and with the weather, we don't want to risk it." And you can't really argue with it. You can't sort of say, "Well, no, why are you doing that for?" Because at the end of the day, I mean, you've seen how widespread the panic's been. It's been difficult just to get players to train. And this was about a month ago when it was still sort of not unknown, but it
in
wasn't
its infancy.
That big of a it wasn't that big of a pandemic. But I mean, for the older teams, I mean, with the men's team and the under-17 boys, the Danny coaches, we trained right up until we really couldn't train anymore, really, and we were still getting decent numbers and players were still committed. I mean, I remember when I put in the chat for that we cancelled. There are a few players that
disgruntled voices.
Yeah, they were frustrated. They wanted to keep training, and sort of. I've had a few messages privately from players asking sort of when training's going to come back. Same with the under-15 boys. They're quite keen to come back as well, and it's like, well, we can't come back while this is all going on. But it's more. I mean, the younger players, you see a lot more. The parents just wanting to be on the safe side, but with the older players, I think it's less cautious. You see.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd agree with that. I think certainly with the age groups that Harry and I coach with, the dealings are with the boys directly rather than the parents as much. And yeah, I mean, they've been pretty much keen to keep playing, keep training. I mean, they're gutted when the game gets called off. So So
Yeah.
you know they want to play regardless.
But it's weird. Sorry to butt in, but it's what I found was the attitude from the two genders as well. Like with the boys, from the younger age of the boys, they were all taken out very, very quickly, and the parents were like, "Nope, we're shutting down." But from the girls, you still had quite a few players. Like with the under-8 girls I coached at, when I put the message in the group chat to say, "Oh, training's done, and we can't carry on until we work out until it's safe to do so," the parents were sort of saying, "Oh, the girls will be gutted," and they obviously they were sort of disappointed, which surprised me really. And even like with the under 14 girls, under 12 girls, we'll still get numbers at training, and parents were sad that training had stopped. But from the boys, it was like the opposite. From younger boys, they were almost pleased that it stopped, or they took their players out before we could even say that it stopped.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. That sort of that complete almost opposite reaction on both. That's really interesting. I mean, we've had a couple of parents that have said, "Oh, we want to have a kickabout at some point." It's like we just have to advise that that's not a great idea, and just pass it along and go, "Look, we'd like to have everyone come back fit and healthy. Let's not do anything silly."
Yeah.
But I mean, I think to be honest, that comes back to a more wider ranging, isn't it? That wider ranging response from people. Are they self-isolating when they need to? Are they acting on social distancing? And I mean, like I say, we had quite a good attendance last weekend of parents, and it was quite a wide range of ages as well. So you had the younger age groups, and then I think that was what was really interesting. Was the grandparents were turning up as well.
Yeah.
And it all just felt a little bit like, okay, I mean, it was probably the right decision. I think that's where it goes back as well, especially with these kids when they go home. And I think it's the same thought process with the schools closing, isn't it? And I think once the schools close, you can't ask parents to go, okay, well, your school think it's too unsafe for the kids to be there. But, if you want to send your kid for a couple of hours a week to go and play a full contact sport, go ahead. You can't really be asking that of anyone. And it's just about,
Sorry
I
to
think,
jump
oh,
in.
sorry.
Go on. No, go on.
I think this is the issue that's been sort of going on really. I mean, you sort of had a good 4 to 6 week period where people just didn't know what to do, and like with clubs, it was like, do we carry on and sort of keep training, sort of let the kids or let the players train, but run the risk of obviously this virus and what's going on, or do we cancel and sort of not be able to get money back from pitches because they're still booked and the schools are still open, and sort of not be able to sort of obviously have the disgruntled players and disgruntled families who want to keep training. I think that's the same with when the schools finally shut, or when they announced the schools finally shut. It's sort of a bit of a sigh of relief really from quite a few organisations, and like now with pubs, that they can probably get some insurance back because it's now you can't go here, whereas before it was we don't mind you. Well, we suggest you don't go here.
It felt like that response was the case, that it was always a half measure, and then they'd get the reaction from it, and the data would come back and go, okay, a half measure isn't going to work here, and the response from government would be, okay, this is not a political point, this is purely on the reaction that they've given. It was, okay, here's a half measure, here's a full measure. And it was like, well, if you'd gone straight to the full measure, we might have had an easier time with certain things. And I think that goes for grassroots football as much as everything else we've spoken about.
Absolutely. I mean, it sort of trickled down because the FA weren't making a decision because the government weren't making a decision. But then the county FAs weren't making a decision, so it went down to the leagues. And the leagues, it was so hit and miss. What was because when we had the men's league, they shut up shop early. They said, listen, we're going to cancel fixtures up until April the 4th. The girls' leagues, all of them said, no, we're cracking on, we're staying on, we're playing matches. The boys' league as well, we cracked on, we stayed playing matches. And it was like, there were some leagues that were off and postponed, there were some leagues that were still carrying on. It's like the clubs were so torn. Like, really, we could have stopped the men's team 2 weeks before we actually did, because the fixtures weren't going ahead, because teams were postponing and teams were wanting to pull out, and the league were allowing that. And then you have the youngest girls and youngest boys that were still having fixtures taking place despite everything that's going on. And there was no leadership from the top, which meant that it was just
handed down to someone else to deal with. Yeah, I can definitely. I think that was the case. I mean, the league, so where my team we play basically on the border between two leagues, and the league that we don't play in, that's maybe a mile away, they'd cancelled. I think at the beginning of this month, they'd cancelled really early. They were right on it. They were like, "No, we're not playing games." But we were still. I mean, to be honest, the conversation I had with my other coach, it was probably the middle of. Not this week, gone the week before that. That was the first conversation we'd had, and that was the first time that he'd had anything from the club, anything that the club had from the league, that the league had from the FA, to have any sort of conversation. And I mean, we train at the FA headquarters, so like that information being passed down, it's not like it's got to travel far.
Yeah, it's not.
Like I walk past the people that work in the county FA when I turn up to train on a Wednesday. It's like that leadership, for sure, seems to have been a little bit missing, and I think. To be honest, that probably goes for football all the way up through the divisions.
In general.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd agree.
We had, so I coached with a semi-pro club, and we had a under 15 boys. We had a semi-final, meaning to take place last week actually, last Sunday.
Last Sunday, yeah.
And one of the boys got ill, so the request was put into the league. Can we postpone the semi-final because one of the boys did want to play it safe. League came back, they're like, nope, we're not postponing, game's going ahead.
That's crazy.
And it was, I mean, complaints were sent out. We sort of tried every trick in the book, and then obviously the club were getting annoyed as well, and then the league was there was a bit of angst about the whole thing, and up until we put it to the boys, and we said, listen, we can't postpone the game. If we don't play, we forfeit. It's up to you. We're missing our two best centre backs. We're missing our best left back. We're missing one of our best forwards. Do you still want to carry on the game? And so we put it to the boys. We got 12 responses saying yes, we want to carry on. So the game was planned to go ahead. Then Saturday must have been about 3-4 o'clock. Ahead of the Sunday game, they're like, "Oh no, we're postponing everything."
Oh, that's
And it was just, it was all over the place. And this is like a semi-pro academy set up, a semi-final League Cup. It's just shocking, really.
That's poor. Yeah.
And just on this point regarding competitions, obviously we've had this suspension now. Now we've talked about in the previous podcast briefly about obviously professional football and when they come back, what would happen, and this is a discussion that can go on for ages. But from a grassroots perspective, is there any other alternative than to just suspend and null and void a season, or like what? Let's start with Harry on this one. With the men's team, have you heard anything about how that's going to play out at all?
I think until the Premier League work out what they're going to do, and I think until it's confirmed how long this goes on for, or when we're confirmed back, I very much doubt there'll be any call. I mean, from a grassroots perspective, I think it just makes sense to null and void the season. I think obviously, if you look at the Premier League, you're looking at your Liverpool's that done well, your Sheffield United's, Leicester's, and on the opposite end of the scale, you look at your Bournemouth, who are sort of just escaping relegation, Brighton and all that. If you null and void the season for the Premier League, I think it'll be detrimental, and there'll be massive sort of riots. I mean, look at Leeds and West Brom as well, who fought hard this season.
That trickle-down effect, I think, will, yeah.
Yeah, I think if in the professional game, in the top end, you cannot. I think you just cannot void the season because it would just cause issues. From a grassroots perspective, where it's not so much life or death, you can just write off the season and just sort of say, listen, we've had to do this. Let's sort of get back up and running next season, and just sort of it's up to the leagues in terms of promotion relegation to work out what to do. But I think, I mean, if it goes beyond April 30th, there's no point carrying on. I mean, we've got men's team have another 6 fixtures due to play.
Wow.
And we can't do that over May, June, July. Assuming we're back up and running April 30th, And considering everyone's going to be unfit as well, considering they've had 2 months off, it's yeah. My thoughts are Grassroots should just be null and voided for this season. Let's focus on next season. But obviously in the professional game, it has to be different.
Yeah, it's obviously there's still got to be some resolution with the professional game as such. Yeah, you're right. Charlie, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd echo Harry's thoughts, to be honest. I think if you get the cut-off point for grassroots football will definitely be much earlier than the professional game, because there isn't that reliance on the results really hugely affecting what happens with a grassroots club. I mean, putting it with if my team has their season null and voided, it's no one's going to remember anything. I mean, no one knows what happened anyway. So the players at this level will still have the experiences they've got through the season. Those games that have happened this year won't have been null and voided for their progression, and that's, I think, ultimately what everyone's looking to get out of it anyway. So as long as those players can return to training, can get a few games in when it's safe, when they can, I think everyone will be happy. And once they get this level goes back to playing again, and we get through a month, 2 months, and everything seems to be working fine, I worry that we'll come back too soon. That they'll see the Premier League come back, and the Premier League will come back behind closed doors, and they'll go, oh, well, we can come back now, that's fine. Like a click, we'll come straight back in, and it will be absolutely fine. I think that decision has to be really well measured, and I can see there being a case. If it was me, I would say, look, let's just wait until the schools come back, and then make a decision, because I think that's the best barometer for it. If the schools are back, and then we can turn around and go, okay, what capacity are the schools back in? Are they taking any special measures that need to be brought in? I mean, if the schools don't come back till the next school year, which I think in Scotland they're working on the proviso that they won't, then I can't see there being any more grassroots football until August or September. I just don't think anyone will want to take that risk. Some people might, though. I think some people might.
Yeah, no, I mean, competitive grassroots football, no chance. I think looking at obviously the league that the under-17s are in, we've got 7 more games we're still meant to play. Teams in our league have got 11. They've still got to play half a season. And I mean, some of those games, for the way that league's worked out, some of those games would be double headers for the other teams. But I mean, for our side, as Harry will know, we've had all our home games, so we can't do any double headers. It has to be 7. It will be 7 games, 7 separate games. And I mean, to do that in such a short time frame would be pretty impressive. I'm not going to lie, but I personally can't see how that happens.
Do you think there'll be any alterations to how the league runs as it is now? Do you think this will be taken as an opportunity to change things at all? Or do you think it will just be a case of, okay, when can we hit the start button again?
I think across the board, personally, like even with the professional game, I think as a result of this, there'll be some kind of clause or some kind of plan for next time. But this is across the board a unique situation.
Oh yeah, unprecedented completely.
Yeah, so I think I'm interested to see how they do it in terms of professional and grassroots, what they do. I mean, to be honest, obviously the grassroots one isn't so important and won't be publicised as much.
No.
But obviously the professional one they've got to get right. And I don't know about you guys, but I think across the board it's going to be hard to get an outcome that pleases everyone. I think
there's going to have to be compromise.
Yeah, so it's going to be difficult. Okay, I guess final little point then, just to end this off. I know we've gone on a little bit longer than expected. What if you had to put a time frame as to when you see football coming back, whether that be competitive or friendlies or anything like that? When do you see grassroots football returning? Charlie, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I think in terms of, I don't think we'll see matches until August or September. I don't think there'll be anything like that, but I can see there being a desire to come back to training of some description earlier than that. I think we could see training come back. We're looking maybe late July if clubs want to come back early. late July, August for training, but I don't. It's so difficult to know because it's a developing story, isn't it? Things could completely get out of hand, or we could get to a month's time and find that actually when the Premier League clubs return, or officially they're saying they'll return, looks viable, then clubs might try and sneak some games in towards the back end of what would be this season. But I don't think anyone will want to take the risk, so August, September would be my best guess.
Yeah, and Harry?
I think, to be honest, as soon as grassroots clubs can, I think they'll try and get training back underway. I think it's. I don't know how you're feeling, Charlie, and I know how Danny's feeling, but without being able to coach is sort of a bit like a void in your life, really. It's
agreed, yeah.
And I think as soon as there's a sign of a return, clubs will be looking at, right, when can we get back up and running. I think matches wise and sort of season structures, I think next season will be the start. I think it'll be back up in September, and the leagues will sort of say let's get underway from first week of September. I don't see competitive matches coming in before then. I think clubs will have to have a bit of time to adjust after this and sort of get players on side and get players signed up again. Because I think there'll be a bit of a changeover in terms of the player personnel they have. But yeah, that's sort of similar to Charlie. Really, I sort of say June, July, maybe for clubs wanting to come back early for pre-season, for training wise, and then September for games.
Yeah. Do you reckon we'll see any sort of friendlies over the summer? Is that something that's viable?
I think clubs will organise friendlies between themselves.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think as soon as they're training, they'll look to try and get in as many games as possible before the season starts, just so they can hit the ground running. I mean, that's what I'm going to try and do. Like, as soon as we can go back, can we get friendlies in? Can we get back into the swing of playing matches and sort of getting our team set up and sort of getting the feel of games as well before the season starts.
Yeah, well, it's certainly unique times anyway. But okay, that brings us to the end of today's podcast. Obviously, thank you very much, chaps. A really good discussion there. To sort of round it all off, if you don't mind just sharing how we can follow you guys on social media. Let's start with Charlie.
Yeah, as usual, you can find me on Twitter at Charlie Pumfrey. Not really active at the moment, but yeah, I'm there.
It's fine. And Harry?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, has7272.
Okay, brilliant. And how can we find Kinja FC?
At Kinja FC, KINJA FC.
Is that on Instagram, Twitter?
Instagram, Twitter, yep, Facebook, the works.
Yeah, and obviously if you pop into Google Kinja FC, you'll find it as well, the website for the club. And you can follow me on Twitter at DannyCook1996. Okay, gents, as I said, thank you very much. A really good podcast there. For anyone listening in, feel free to leave us your comments, your thoughts as to what will happen with grassroots football and how things could potentially resume or restart. Please do leave your thoughts. We'll read them, and it'll be certainly interesting to look at. But that's all for today's episode. So thank you very much for listening, and until the next one, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.